my guest. He has been patiently waiting. Thank you for that, Esteban. Esteban Carrillo. He is a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist currently writing for Cradle. How you doing, my man? It feels like it's been forever since I've talked to you. You doing okay?
Hey, Jamal, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Always glad to be back on the program. And good morning
Oh
to everyone
man,
who's joining us.
always glad to have you. The audience loves you. I appreciate you. Um, when the dramatic collapse of Syria took place,
Mhm.
there were people like us who felt some kind of way about it. And I'm saying that in that way because I don't live there, and yet I have a producer at the show that has his family who lives in Syria and Lebanon.
Mhm.
And there was something, it was like a punch to the gut. It was dramatic, right? This government collapsed. The US had been after Syria for decades. The Assad government has been able to withstand the jihadists that Turkey and the US were effectively backing. And out of the blue, on a random day, it fell apart. Your soldiers take off their uniforms, were walking away, drop their weapons. You had a melting away of the state, in which case these jihadists backed by Turkey, Israel, and the US were able to effectively topple the government.
Mhm.
We said they are going to murder the minority populations. It's in the bricks. They're going to do it. They hate these people. And for all of the talk about Jelani being able to control his gang of dogs and mutts, he wasn't able to do it. And finally, when you had this kind of uprising with these people being sick of being killed over the course of all of these months, that the media in the West completely whitewash, you got an uprising. And then in reprisals, you had HTS, effectively Al Qaeda or ISIS in Syria, going house to house, murdering women, children, and anybody else that's effectively at those houses in reprisals. The videos that have been coming out have been desperate, um, deranged in the way that somebody would do that. I've seen somebody beat children, kill children. This
Yes.
is what they wrought. Like,
Mhm.
this is what they did.
Mhm.
And while telling us that this was democracy, this was an upspring of democracy that these jihadists took over. Give me your take on what's happening on the ground in Syria. At first, is anything I said wrong? There's that. And
Not
two,
at all, Jamal. You gave a pretty straightforward account, and just to remind the listeners today that this platform, your channel, has been one of the few spots in which we've had the chance to be pragmatic about what was going to happen in Syria, to be
yeah,
completely realist, and to go against the imposed narrative of NATO and its media partners. That was, it's a brand new day for Syria. My God, Jamal, just remember all of the headlines that were coming out with Shara, with Ahmad al-Shara, the de facto president of Syria, calling him the reformist, calling him diversity friendly, calling
yep,
him,
yep. Diversity friendly. Oh, I forgot about that one.
yeah. No, I mean,
Gay friendly terrorists. Yeah,
exactly. No, and there was another one that was just horrible. That was like a moderator. That was, just like the whitewashing of, as you said, the leader, not the leader, I'm sorry, the founder of Al Qaeda in Syria and
yeah.
the deputy commander of the founder of ISIS. This is who Ahmad al Shara is. Up until 3 months ago, he was known as Abu Muhammad al Jolani, right? He's nom de guerre. And now he's trimmed his beard, he's wearing a suit, he's getting invited to European capitals. He's set to travel to Brussels in just a few days.
Yep.
He was hobnobbing with all of the Arab leaders last week in Riyadh. In Cairo, he went to Riyadh to meet with MBS. I mean, it's upside down world, Jamal. But what happened this weekend is exactly what we had warned, right? Because the world got a reminder of what Al Qaeda means, right? I mean,
Yeah.
second, let's remember who Al Qaeda was, right? The whole war on terror started because of Al Qaeda. Well, according to the U.S., right? According to the U.S. government, according to George W. Bush, but they were the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks that led to everything that we are living today, right? In particular, in
Mhm.
the region of West Asia. What the situation on the ground in Syria at the moment, it seems that the massacres have, if not stopped, at least slowed down. That's nothing to really celebrate because we're talking of, at the very least, about 1,000 civilians killed. Other reports talk about more. Other reports talk about thousands of that because These are ISIS dogs that were unleashed on the Alawite villages of the coastal towns of Latakia and Tartus, with the sole purpose of extermination. We at the Cradle a few weeks ago, we had in one of our feature articles, we had a quote from someone within the transitional government that Shara leads in Damascus, who told us that in a private meeting, Shara said in the most calm way that the killings are going to happen and they're going to last for a few years, that it's inevitable. And, as we said, we have been warning about this because his army of thugs, the people who now we are calling the security forces of Syria, are ISIS members, are Al Qaeda members. Many of them are not even Syrian. We're talking about Turkish terrorists, we're talking about Chechens, Uyghurs, Uzbekis, etc., right, from Central Asia. All of these maniacs who at one point decided to join the caliphate, the fight to form a caliphate, not just in Syria. Remember, ISIS wants a global caliphate, right? Al Qaeda wants to impose their beliefs on everyone, and if they don't, if they can't, or if they won't, they simply kill you, right? And as we saw over the past several days, so the transitional government, I'm going to use their terms, in reality, the Al Qaeda government has announced the formation of an independent committee to investigate the massacres. I'm sure we cannot wait to hear who's going to lead this committee, which Al Qaeda or ISIS commander is going to lead this committee. And I'm convinced they're going to have the same veracity and interest in finding the truth as when Israel investigates.
Do their commissions,
exactly. And one thing that it's definitely, I think at least as while this is still fresh in people's minds, right, the massacres of thousands of Alawites, civilians, is that the Gaza playbook is what is being implemented in Syria, in those coastal towns, right? From the door-to-door massacres, from the indiscriminate bombing. We saw images of these ISIS members dropping barrel bombs of helicopters. The fact that Shara at one point over the weekend issued a statement saying, "Stop filming yourself committing atrocities." Same thing Israel does. They don't come out and say, "Stop committing the atrocities." They say, "Stop filming yourself." So that
and that is God, man. That is such a wild feature of modern society. Like because it gives some kind of context to the person who's doing it. Do people film themselves doing stuff that they think is bad and wrong? Not typically. And so you would think, okay, well, maybe they don't think it's bad and wrong for them to do it. Like they are so into their mindset that I want to take a picture, like in the way that I would take a picture of me in Disney World, right? So in the way I would take a picture of me jet skiing, they take pictures of themselves committing atrocities.
Because that's what ISIS is. That's what it is, right? It's about killing. It's about murder. It's not about how can you form a government with these people, right? How can you give them the legitimacy? Like I said, Shara expected in Brussels in a few days. And remember, just a couple of months ago, it was like all of the European foreign ministers were in Damascus, one after the other, meeting with this man at the IMF, the World Bank. It's absurd.
I'll give you another one. A few months ago, he had a $10 million bounty on his head for being an ISIS leader.
And he got lifted, right? And he got lifted by the US. I mean, Jamal, it's so bad that on Friday, as these massacres were happening, as the videos were just pouring out of Syria, as the reports and the Alawites were flooding into the Russian airbase, hoping to, for some level of safety from these jihadi maniacs, the UK lifts the sanctions on Syria's central bank. They choose that day to announce that they have lifted the sanctions on Syria's central bank to allow for Syria's reconstruction and to bring Syria together, because they believe in the word of these a fine dressed jihadi who says I'm all for diversity and I'm all for respecting minorities. And I mean, the EU put out a statement on Saturday saying that they condemn the attacks on the security forces. No mention of civilians.
I will do you one better. So the reporting in the United States was Assad loyalists attack the Syrian government. Assad loyalists. Like, that is such a whitewash. Like they could.
How much lower can you get, honestly?
Yeah, I hate the media environment because what they fundamentally ignore is that the Alawites and many of the minority communities supported Assad because on some level they kept him safe.
Yeah, you
And
don't even know. I mean, you don't even know if these people actually supported Assad, because one thing that I think has been completely lost in the mix is that nobody in Syria wants Assad back. You can
yeah,
go in Syria, throw a stone, and no, I mean, no, you can go in Syria and ask anyone, and they will tell you, we don't want Assad back. Like, life under Assad was terrible, but that doesn't mean that life under these people is any better. It's definitely worse.
exactly. Wow. Yeah, God, man, my heart goes out to what is taking place there. One of the interesting things, though, the United States and Russia apparently went to the UN Security Council trying to get a UN Security Council resolution on what's taking place there. Tulsi Gabbard is director of national intelligence. Gabbard has been pretty vocal about this idea of, oh my God, we have a jihadist terrorist leading Syria right now. This is outrageous. And at the very least in the US, they would talk about, okay, they're killing Christians because that's all we care about, right? Like, they're killing Christians. This is horrible. This is outrageous. We should do something about it. Give me your take on that. I mean, do you think a UN Security Council resolution would do anything? What would it even mean to have a UN Security Council resolution about something like this? I mean, unless you're putting boots on the ground, it's not really going to matter, I suppose.
Exactly. Or like, what are you gonna do? Like, start sanctioning the country that you've been telling us for the past 3 months that it's the newborn Syria, the Syria of the future. Like, it goes against your own narrative, right? Against everything that you've been trying to impose, even up to the last recent the last few days. The one power that could over the weekend pick up the phone and stop all of these massacres was Turkey. It was Turkey, because these are Turkish folks.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because one of the interesting things, too, during the Latakia uprising, Turkey was sending troops in order to put down the uprising. Because HTS, Al Qaeda, apparently didn't have enough animals in order to put down the protests that was taking place in those regions. Well, Turkey, their hands are covered in blood.
Yeah, Turkey is completely behind this. I mean, let's recap a bit for maybe people who are unfamiliar with what happened over the past several days. It was on Thursday that groups calling themselves a few months ago in January, I think, there was a group of the remnants of the Syrian Arab army that dissolved right when Assad fell, put out a statement saying that the formation of the Islamic resistance in Syria. That they would liberate Syria, etc. And on Thursday, there were these ambushes on HTS patrols. HTS Al Qaeda, the rebranded Al Qaeda. It's a group that Shara leads still. And they get attacked. They get killed by these former soldiers in the Syrian Arab army. They put out a statement signed by a former general, saying that they're going to liberate Syria, that they're going to liberate it from the terrorist elements, that they're going to liberate it from Israel, because Israel is occupying about 500 square kilometers of southern Syria, which is something that the transitional government in Damascus doesn't seem to give a flying F about. And so they attack them, and that's what sparks the violence, right? Because they start clashing. There are clashes initially, but then these clashes immediately devolve into revenge killings, into ethnic cleansing, into a new genocide of Alawites, with that justification. And that's what gives Western media and the EU the ammo to come out and say, oh, we condemn the attacks by the Assad remnants. Assad is whatever. Like I said, there's no one in Syria that wants Assad back. I don't think even Assad wants to go back. He's happy in Moscow. He made his choice. This man left without even giving a statement, without even saying a word. Remember that. He left Damascus in the middle of the night and fled for Moscow, where he's living now safely with his family. Right? There's no love lost for this man. There wasn't any love lost for this man in Syria. And I think the fact that his army dissolved in the way that it did, and he had to flee in the way that he did in complete silence under the cover of night, shows you how much support Bashar al-Assad has in Syria, right? This man was being held up thanks to Iranian and Russian influence. But that obviously changed following the election of Donald Trump. And I think we're seeing the shape of it in recent days, right? Today, Saudi Arabia is hosting talks between Ukraine and Russia. The US already cut all military aid to Ukraine. So This does every day appear to be like a give and take situation, right? Like, okay, we'll give up.
Whoa! Wait. You got to go back on that one. What do you mean give and take?
I feel like Syria was again. I think I said this before, but this is just my opinion because
Yeah.
just like connecting the dots and knowing everything that we knew up to that point. And to me, it's just Russia realizing that they could get something out of the Trump White House, and like what is the benefit of Assad anymore for us at the end of the
We
day?
still
Because
disagree on this. We still disagree. I'm sorry. Make your point. Make your point.
no, that's it. That is really it. To me, it's what happened in Syria was not. It didn't come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It was not like not this popular movement that all of a sudden decided that I'm gonna march on Damascus and we're gonna take power to make life better for all Syrians. No, what happened was there was an order, like a phone was picked up. And Jolani was told, time to shave your beard, lose the turban, go to, we'll send you some suits, we'll send some tailors for all of your jihadi maniacs that have been running amok in Idlib, because Shara was in control of Idlib for like 5 years. And they start marching down on Damascus. And it's like Jamar, when Afghanistan, when the US left Afghanistan in 2021, and the Taliban was marching on Kabul, the U.S.-trained Afghan army was essentially folding as they went. Right? There was no opposition. There was no fighting. When the Taliban would arrive to a new village, the commanders of the army would sit down with them, and they would reach an agreement, and they would leave at their arms and go. And that took the Taliban to reach Kabul and take control of Kabul about 3 months. Syria happened in like 8 days. Less. It was about a week in which this happened. And so this is not there was no opposition, there was no battles. There's still a lot of obscurity about what actually happened with the Syrian army during those days, because there's reports that they were getting orders saying, lay down your weapons, don't fight, keep retreating. And officially, what the government and the army were saying was like, we are, strategic retreats to better, protect Damascus, to better protect whatever. And these strategic retreats ended with, Assad getting on a plane and flying to Russia. So, you don't need to be Nostradamus, or you don't need a crystal ball or to be an insider in Washington, D.C., to even start to wonder, right? Like there's obviously something going on behind the scenes here. And because Syria at this point is being completely Balkanized. Syria is the south, like I said, controlled by Israel. Israel is not going. Israel has said it very clearly. And if there's one thing that you can that you can trust, I guess, in Israeli leaders is that they do kind of stand by their word, right? When they say we're going to kill all these people, they go and they kill all these people. When we're going to occupy this land, they usually don't give it back. So the government, the transitional government in Syria a few weeks ago puts out this map that shows Syria without the Golan Heights, essentially saying, okay, the Golan Heights is Israeli, and without an area in the northwest, which is also, that Turkey has occupied. And now you have, last night, the U.S.-backed Kurds, the Syrian Democratic Forces, signed an agreement with Shara on the eve of this horrible massacre, in which they agreed to be folded into this terrorist-led government, right? So all of a sudden, Shara has also control of the northeast of Syria, right, where the Kurds are holding, with the help of the U.S., they've been holding Syria's largest oil fields, their wheat fields, and a bunch of ISIS prison camps where thousands of ISIS members are being held, and their families as well. This is Turkey.
The former ISIS commander, or the leader, Jolani, has now gained access to ISIS prisoners that were being held in northern Syria.
It's unclear if they are actually going to be in control. They say they are, right? Like they're looking for some legitimacy. SDF commanders have said this morning that it's still not determined who's going to take control of the prisons, because you would hope that there's still like like a voice in the room saying, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't give the ISIS army to the ISIS
Maybe
guy."
this is a bad
He just
idea.
committed a horrible massacre, killing thousands of, in sectarian revenge killings, entire families wiped off the civil registry. Maybe let's not, right? Maybe let's give it to somebody else. But the transitional government is saying that they're also going to take control of the border areas with Iraq, which needs to launch, an endless array of exclamation marks in the security apparatus in Iraq, because okay, like we defeated ISIS in our country thanks to Iranian help around 2017, and we wiped them out, and now we're going to have them on our borders. Al Qaeda and
Yeah.
all of these foreign terrorists are going to become the security forces on our western border. We're living in the upside down world.
I've heard the argument that Russia made a deal in order to basically a quid pro quo. You give us something in Ukraine, we'll give you something in Syria. The only reason I disagree with that is because it was under the Biden administration, and Joe Biden was a lunatic on the issue of Ukraine. We're with you for as long as it takes. We're going to keep going, etc. And I guess for me,
Business for him.
well, I guess for me, Russia just won.
True.
Like the reason that Donald Trump is coming to the negotiating table is because there was nowhere else to go. Like meaning your forces got fundamentally destroyed. And what's about to happen in Kursk right now, and what took place over the last few days, where they have completely collapsed. And it was so bad that people thought Putin did this on purpose, which I don't buy, but whatever. They make the point of saying Ukraine lost so many forces, so much material, so much manpower in the Kursk region that this had to be a grand master plan by Putin. But that gets across how bad they are getting destroyed on the battlefield. And so if you're Trump and you're coming in and you're seeing this, you're like, okay, they fundamentally won. We need to stop this. It's getting us to the brink of a third world war, for one. And two, our economy is not better off in this situation. And so Russia has demonstrated their military prowess, their competence on the battlefield in a way that we don't need to keep going in this. This is Joe Biden's war. I want to end it. I said I was going to end it, so I'm going to end it. I don't see a quid pro quo in that. I do see a situation where it seems like the Syrian military was melting away. Either they were being paid, either they didn't want to fight for Assad, and they were dealing with a force that was better equipped, tanks, armored vehicles. I mean, the West and Turkey had loaded these guys up with military armaments and equipment that the Syrian army couldn't necessarily countenance. Not to mention if they were also being paid off, or if you had people who were in the Syrian government who was telling them, put down your weapons and walk away. I don't know. Give me your take on that. I mean, I guess I have a hard time believing that Russia was working with Joe Biden on a quid pro quo in Syria for something in Ukraine, when up to that point, Joe Biden was lunatic. He was out of his mind.
But like I said, Jamal, this all came to be right after the election of Donald Trump, when that shoe dropped, and it was apparent. I mean, from that moment on, Joe Biden was a dead man walking. If he wasn't before, right? Like
He was a
we
dead
can
man
avert
walking
the
before,
situation
too, but fair enough, yeah.
with that president. But because there could have been more resistance. There really could have, from the Syrian army. And I think that the attacks that we saw on Thursday against the Al Qaeda security forces shows that. It puts it on display. Because before Jolani and his thugs arrived to Damascus, the Syrian army was still equipped. They had still an air force. They still had the armament that Israel then destroyed. Because remember that Jolani comes to Damascus, Assad flees, and the first thing that happens is Israel starts bombing the hell out of Syria, hundreds upon hundreds of times, a ferocious campaign that destroys every remnant of the military
power,
of the equipment, the arsenal, etc. And whatever was left. The Jolani thugs have them in their hands now, and whatever these new resistance faction, whatever, I don't remember their name, whatever they could carry in their hands, right? But it's just the fact that it was just like a retreat after retreat, to me shows me, right? Because at the same time as this happened in Syria is when the ceasefire talks start finally getting serious in Gaza, right? And you have Steve Witkoff already traveling to Israel and forcing the Israeli officials to meet on the Sabbath to iron out a deal that now is completely being violated, completely being thrown to the side. But at that point, it was happening. So I think it pointed out. I think all of these developments, what they did is they point to a White House, to a leader that was very interested in starting his term with a bang, right?
Yeah.
Everything changes. Everything's different now. Like the past 4 years of Biden have been just like this endless status quo that has just been dragging on everywhere. Now I'm going to change the status quo. Is it a better one? That's up for debate, honestly. We don't know.
But there's the other thing to this. Russia and Iran wanted Syria on their side. Like, meaning, I think it's a pain in the ass for Russia to have to deal with a Syrian government that is on some level hostile to that same Russia and is obsequious to the West. That, like, all of these things are negatives. Like, even with dealing with Iran has been fundamentally kicked out of Syria. I mean, Hezbollah.
Iran's a big loser of what happened.
Yeah, they are.
Well, no, I'm sorry. It's the second big loser.
But Russia in this, which is why I've already, like, when Lavrov came out that meeting, Lavrov looked pissed. It's almost as if Turkey screwed them in this.
The reality here is that Russia is a country that I feel too often gets lumped in mistakenly with what we know as the resistance axis, right? Maybe we consider them too close of an ally. But in reality, Russia is out for themselves. Russia really is
out. Right. Now, no disagreement, right? Yeah. I agree with you. They're not part of the resistance.
Yeah.
But they have no
at all. And I mean, Iran is, right? Like, just for context. So when Damascus falls, when Jolani rises, like I said, the second biggest loser is Iran. The biggest loser is the Syrian people, without a doubt.
Agreed.
But geopolitically, Iran loses a lot. But then there's also the question, Jamal, because is Iran also rethinking its position in the region, right? Because before we go to Iran, with Russia is partners with Turkey. They're friendly. Yeah. They're completely friendly with Turkey. There's no animosity there. And
Russia, frenemies. I said frenemies because Erdogan is purely out for himself.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yes, Erdogan is out to recreate the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that he's gonna go and all of a sudden start fighting Russia or even sanctioning Russia, right? Like Turkey has been trying to play both sides for a while now. They've been pretty successful at it. They've been very successful at it. And you also need to consider that Russia is not really. There's not a lot of animosity against Israel in Russia. There's not, it's not like it's not like I don't know, South Africa, right? Like South Africa has taken a pretty strong stance against Israel. You have a handful of other nations that have done the same, but nations like Russia or China, they have not, because of their own geopolitical considerations. And in my view, is because we are already so preoccupied with any other things. Why even pick this fight, right? Like, this fight is not our fight.
Well, they've criticized pretty heavily. I mean, especially with Israel's association with the United States.
Yeah, but Turkey has been, Erdogan has been calling Netanyahu Hitler. And then their ties are as fine as they have ever been. So that's as far as Iran, I think, well, just to finish my thought, that I think, Iran is also, I think it was obvious.
Rethinking their position in the region. Explain what you mean by rethinking.
The war that just wrapped up a few months ago in the region, right? That destroyed parts of Lebanon. That, well, we saw what happened in Gaza and in the West Bank. What's happening now? It was very costly. It was very costly in terms of not just of cash or arms, even in people, right? But also in what you would call a geopolitical standing, right? Into Israel was so violent with the help of the West, with the help of NATO, that I think there was a big concern in Iran about actually getting dragged into this war, right? Because I think at some point in Iran, they came to the realization that this was actually a very much existential war. That this was this could very well end the Islamic Republic, and I think that threat's still there. So Iran really is, they're swimming in shark-infested waters, that nation. And I think that this is why you've seen over recent weeks, this back and forth between the president and
And
his
Ayatollah.
sphere of influence, Pezeshkian, and Khamenei, right, the supreme
Yeah.
leader, into whether Iran should or should not have talks with the United States for a new nuclear deal. And for a while, that was really back and forth, for like a couple of weeks or for a couple of months, really. It was really coming and going. But in the past couple of weeks, I think they finally aligned. And they are saying we will not negotiate anything with the United States while under pressure, while under maximum pressure sanctions, and while under threats, right, of essentially war, because they're having these threats. But before that, when Syria was falling, Iran, I think, they really saw the writing on the wall. And now, my theory of that, like Iran rethinking its position in the region, is, I think, clearly seen in Lebanon, where Hezbollah has completely taken a step back. They still say, right? The Hezbollah Secretary General still says, just yesterday, he said that the resistance will not allow for Israel to continue its occupation of the south. That is inevitable. Well, he inferred that it was inevitable, that there would be a new confrontation. But that, like I said, like Erdogan comes out and puts out these statements. Russia comes out and the statements are one thing. The statements can say anything you want. Sharaf puts out a statement saying, I'm going to investigate the mass killings. That doesn't mean he's
right.
So I feel like for now, the Hezbollah is also playing this game.
Yeah.
This game of we'll stay out here in the public sphere, right? We will pull out statements, we'll say this, we'll say that. But there's not an interest really in returning to the war. I really, really doubt that there's any interest from anyone in the resistance or in Iran or, even left. I don't know, well, in Syria maybe still. But Hezbollah has really stepped back and taken their position as a political party for the past couple of months at least. We'll see what happens next.
The Iran thing is fascinating. I had this conversation with Dr. Morandi. I'm sorry, with Professor Morandi.
I'm sure Morandi has completely different outview from what I say.
Well, yeah, So his thing was there's an alignment between the president and the Ayatollah at this point. And my thing to him was, at this point, but clearly there was a disagreement between the presidential office, meaning the governmental space, and this space above the government in regards to the Ayatollah. Mm-hmm. And Pezeshkian may have aligned himself with the Ayatollah because, but the fact that there was a public spat between the two is fascinating. Yeah. Like, I'm not aware of there being a public spat between the government and then this entity above the government in prior terms. But this was something that took place in public because otherwise we wouldn't even know about it. And so Pezeshkian wanted to negotiate. He seemed to be more open to this idea of, hey, let's have talks with the US. And the Ayatollah was, we've done that. We're not doing that again.
Man, they already screwed us once.
Said it one more time.
They already screwed us once. The US walked out of the deal.
Exactly. Ayatollah was there for it, right? It wasn't like, this happened 50 years ago. They just killed the JCPOA within my lifetime, within your lifetime.
7 years ago. It's been 7 years.
Yeah, this was less than a decade ago. Trump was the guy to kill the JCPOA. And as Morandi made a really good point, he says Trump is all over the place. I mean, Trump is ending deals with Canada and Mexico that he himself negotiated, that he said was the best deal on the planet. Eliminated the JCPOA, just blew it out the water for no reason at all, just because he came in. He didn't necessarily care about it. When Trump came in the last time around, he destroyed NAFTA, another deal that was negotiated. If you're looking at what took place with the Minsk agreements, if you're looking at what took place with the Istanbul agreements, or the nuclear agreements, or the missile agreements that the U.S. had with Russia, they blew all that stuff away. And I'm not saying Trump was the only one to do it. I'm saying Morandi's point is the U.S. is an untrustworthy actor. And of all the untrustworthy actors, Trump is the apex of that. Yeah. Well, how can you make a deal with somebody like that who's throwing out threats at the exact same time? Meaning this thing that Trump does of, well, I'm going to be hyperbolic, but I'm going to send my people to negotiate. How can you ever trust that in the terms that Iran may get? It's not going to necessarily be favorable because they think you're weak, as opposed to Russia, who just won a war, in which case, okay, now we have to deal with you on equal terms because you just kicked our ass in a war. Iran is in a particular space where they don't believe they can negotiate with the U.S. because they don't believe that they can get anything legitimate out that deal on equal terms. And so Pezeshkian seems to be I'm going to use the term naive. Somebody may disagree with that. More naive on this front. Keep in mind, Pezeshkian was the same guy who they told, "Hey, we're going to get a deal, so don't attack Israel." And he went for weeks without a response,
Yeah.
believing that, well, the U.S. is going to get a deal in the Middle East. Joe
In
Biden
Gaza.
never got the deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me your take on that. I said a lot, but give me your take on what I just said there.
No, I
Because
think actually, you know what you're saying, and especially what Dr. Marandi said is completely on point. It's completely on point.
yeah,
Russian diplomats have a term for the U.S., and that's agreement incapable. The United States is agreement incapable. They cannot go to any agreement, and it's not just the U.S., right? I think Israel is a perfect example
right,
of a nation that is agreement incapable. So I think it makes sense, right? Like because there was a shakeup in the Iranian government just a few days ago. The Iranian minister got sacked, the economic minister, I'm sorry, and Zarif, right? One of the one of the people who negotiated the JCPOA, Javad Zarif, was also tendered his resignation, apparently under pressure, right? Because in Iran you have these two camps, right? The reformists and well, the non-reformists,
yeah,
the people who are more aligned with the with what the supreme leader says. And with the reformists, obviously, there's always this desire to open up more to the West. But I think recent history has shown us that you cannot trust, right? And I think what you said about Donald Trump is completely on point because exactly, right? How can you trust a man that today puts tariffs on Canada and Mexico only to lift them tomorrow? He's already done that
yeah,
twice.
right. How do you do
You
that?
know, he's like a child running amok, right? Like just trying to see like in a candy store, right? Just trying to grab everything, put it back, move this here, see what works. Right? I feel like this is gonna be the defining characteristic of this Trump
Public
term
industry.
is
Yeah,
just open everything. You know, just come in and just grab grab the table and throw it over and see where everything lands and see if you can get better deals for the US. Or I don't even know if it's really this is about, let's get a better deal for the US populace. I feel like let's get a better deal for ourselves. Let's get
I
a
mean,
better deal for our industries. But
yeah,
who knows what's
what's
going to
that?
happen, because any deal that they get with Iran is going to be a completely different deal than the JCPOA, and it's not gonna. And at this point, Iran is gonna have way more enriched uranium close to weapons grade than they did back in 2015 or
Right.
2018.
But they don't want a nuclear bomb, oddly enough. And I'm saying oddly enough because,
That's what
a
they
nuclear
say.
bomb,
I don't know if
yeah,
at this point we
you
can
don't buy
trust
it.
the word anymore.
You don't buy it.
I
I
mean,
mean, like they're put in this kind of position where they're pushed in a corner.
yes,
And, there have been people saying, hey, in the same way that North Korea has that nuclear bomb and you can't hit North Korea because they have a nuclear weapon, maybe you need to do the same. Israel has a nuclear bomb. Like, what is your protective mechanism? Well, they've
exactly.
always said, well, we can flow straight from Hormuz and we can effectively destroy the oil industry if we need to and if we're attacked. That's our nuclear weapon. Give me your take on that. I mean, like, Trump has been making threats as if he's going to attack Iran. I'm suspicious of that just because I think it would destroy his presidency if he did, and I think he knows it. But he still will make threats, just like he will make towards North Korea or any particular country.
Yeah.
Um, Give me a take.
Well, U.S. Supremacy needs to be protected at all costs, first of all, or the idea of it, right? The idea of we are the strongest army, we are capable of doing anything we want. So, of course, I feel like that's where a lot of these the threats of war
Yeah,
stem, because, as you say, the actual logistics of launching a war against Iran, it's going to be difficult. Like,
no,
what troops are going to go into? I mean, are you going to send the jihadis in Syria to get cut down at the Iranian border? Or
I
is
don't think
Israel?
so.
How is Israel going to march on Iran? Their best option, their only option, really, is long range attacks, or even nuclear weapons that they can
Right,
launch. That Israel does have, and Iran, they say they don't. They say they don't want one. But I think again, the last war was more than enough evidence to show that you need some sort of deterrence. You cannot just continue to trust in the word of your enemy or think that you can. What good is it going to be to blockade
straight up
the
Hormuz.
oil markets if all of a sudden 2-3 nuclear bombs are hitting Iran and Tehran and other big cities? It's not going to
I
do.
think it's more complicated than that, though. I mean, the security agreement that they signed with Russia. I mean, it goes beyond security,
Ah,
but
yes.
the part that I popped up. My eyes popped up was security. And what does that mean? Does
I
that
mean,
mean
the security
S-400
agreement,
missiles?
the security agreement they signed, it doesn't call for intervention if a nation gets attacked. It just calls for the in the case Iran gets attacked, Russia wouldn't join those attacking Iran.
Right. But they would help significantly. And I strongly suspect that they're helping significantly now by beefing up
Yes,
Iran's
yes.
security architecture.
Yeah, I mean, like this bull in a China shop strategy for Trump, what he's doing is bringing allies closer together.
Yes. Yes, kind of. It's interesting. This is going to sound very weird. There's parts of me that like this. I'm sick of status quo.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of status quo in regards to foreign policy. I'm sick of status quo in regards to the way we operate as a country, especially around the globe. And I agree with you. Trump is a bull in a china shop. And a lot of the stuff I don't like just because it's upending in the way that we operate. But at some level, I think we need to upend the way we operate. Like NATO is a really good example of this. NATO should not exist. It just shouldn't. It's a funding mechanism and an old home for generals that posture and say all of this nonsense, but in no way, when they finally got the war that they wanted against Russia, lost. They lost billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars just blown up on the White House lawn. And, it's like, okay, so your entire reason for existence was to fight the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union went belly up, and the spiritual successor, being Russia, is a much smaller country with a much smaller economy. And you still lost. They have an $80 billion a year military budget. They spent $350 billion just from the United States alone and lost. Like, you think to yourself, why are we doing this? Why does this thing exist? Like, why are we spending all of this money for this nonsense? And Trump comes in and said, I'm done with this. I'm calling it a day. And I applaud. Thank you for that.
Yeah, 100%.
We are going to pay attention to the U.S. concerns. And again, I'm like, good. But then, of course, he's a maniac for Israel. And it's kind of weird Israel first policy. I don't know. It's a mixed bag. I'll just say it's a mixed bag. I'm sick of the status quo. So I love the fact that status quo is being upended. But the bull in the China shop thing.
No. And honestly, what you said here is the most concerning thing, the Israel first policy. He's not an America first president. He's an Israel first president. So was Joe Biden. So was Obama. So was Bush. You just keep going back.
With the exception of Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Have you heard, somebody made the point of saying Richard Nixon was the last progressive president we ever had, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Nixon has this conversation. He's being interviewed. And he says, there are times where American interests and Israel interests diverge. And you have to effectively tell them, no, that this is, my job as an American president is to be an American president. And while there'll be many issues that we would agree with Israel on, they're a settler colonial state. We want our little colony in the Middle East. All that stuff's fine. But there will be times where they would want something that goes against American interests. And it is our job to say no. That is the last president to say that.
AIPAC has done a very good job in the decades in between.
Do you think it's, and this could be the last question, is it the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? A lot of people, I ask that because there are a lot of people who come on the show who believe that Israel has full control of American and U.S. policy. There are other people who are in the military who would say that is not the case. That say, regardless of how this looks, it is the U.S. effectively working with their colony in the Middle East to expand influence in that region. And as far as Israel expands, we look at it as it is in our best interest. So we will help, assist, give money to that particular cause. Whereas it looks as if you're on the outside looking in, that it is Israel controlling it, but really it's the U.S. in control of what is happening in that region. What's your take on that? Do you think it's the dog wagging the tail or the tail wagging the dog?
I think it looks like the tail wagging the dog, but I feel like that is kind of washing the hands of the United States too much. Because, for example, let's just focus on Gaza for a second, right? Everything that has happened in Gaza since October 7, 2023 couldn't have happened without the approval and the help of the United States, right? When we talk about the genocide in Gaza, it's not just an Israeli genocide. This is a U.S.-Israeli genocide, hell, U.S.-Israeli-German genocide, right? Because it couldn't have happened without the complete support that they received. And, you can say it was Biden. You can say, that he should have been stronger, whatever. It could have been anyone sitting in the White House. The situation would have been exactly the same, because there is this, when we talk about Israel as a settler colonial state, we shouldn't forget that the United States is the same. It was founded under the same principles. It was founded under even possibly an even more horrific genocide under the slave trade, thanks to the slave trade. And when that went away, they started implementing the Monroe Doctrine in Latin America, just like taking all of our resources. And it started, to spread to the rest of the world. And Israel does the same in the Arab world. It's the same mentality. It's the same settler colonial mentality. The only difference today, we have smartphones. The only difference today, we have the internet. That is truly the only difference, is the fact that this is happening in the present day. And I feel that this is, first of all, where their visions align. And second of all, like you said, right, like Israel is too valuable for the United States in the region to let go, to allow anything to happen to it, including the formation of a Palestinian state, because the United States can say all they want about they support a two-state solution. If they really supported a two-state solution, they would have done something to, first of all, enforce the Oslo Accords of 1992, and then to over the past couple of decades, they have had plenty of opportunities to allow the Palestinians to form their own government, to get sovereignty, to get living conditions, because you don't fight resistance. I mean, a decent, respectable living conditions, because you don't fight resistance with weapons. You don't fight it with violence. You fight it with ideas, and you fight it by offering a better system. That's the way you defeat resistance. And that's simply not, and that's something that neither Israel nor the US are interested in the least in doing.
Yeah. I had this argument. It was an argument with Netanyahu's press secretary. And those are frustrating conversations. Mm-hmm. Because to me, in the conversation, I go with this idea that I would say, hey, logically speaking, if you put people in horrible conditions, those people are going to do horrible things in order to push back on those horrible conditions. Like, basically, I am what you made me. So wouldn't you need some state for the Palestinians where there can be security for both? And of course, it's like, no.
No, because it's our land. Because the Bible says
none of what you said matters. We don't care. Basically, that was the argument. We don't care. Meaning, it's difficult to have an argument in this situation, because the reality of it is, we are trying to take over. Do you get that? We don't give a shit about this other stuff. Our job is to expand and to take over that territory. It is not about your logic. It's not about what's right. It's not about any of that stuff. We want to take over. Okay, fair enough. There's no way to have that argument, right? Like, that's not even putting up a false pretense of an argument. It's just, that is not our objective.
Yeah.
And so anything that I say is in pursuant of my overarching objective, which is to take over the territory. Like, it's just a wild conversation to have. Esteban, man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Esteban Carrillo, Ecuadorian-based journalist currently. I'm sorry, Ecuadorian journalist currently writing for The Cradle. He was previously with Sir English. Esteban, where can people find your work besides The Cradle?
You can find us on social media at The Cradle Media. You can find me at Esteban Carlo, my Twitter handle, and on YouTube too. Check out our podcast, The Cradle News Roundup.
Oh, badass, man. Thank you for this. Really appreciate it, Esteban.
Thank you, Jamal. I'll talk to you next time.
Be safe.